what do you think is the problem that the red pill movement correctly identifies when no one else wants to acknowledge it? Yeah, go on. You go on.
I'm gonna say again, because I think when people, and I watch a lot of these people, I think when, for example, red pill crowd would be so overly anti-feminist, now they would be so dogmatic that I think they go way too far. So whenever, for example, legitimate concerns like, okay, violence amongst men is brought up, like wife beating is brought up, or domestic violence is brought up, then they would come up with something as ridiculous as as like, well, women beat up men too. And you're like, well, hang on a second, they're not on equal footing. Like, I mean, how many women die at the hands of abusive husbands? Hands down, it'll be like it'll be a 1 in 1,000 where a man dies at the hands of a woman, or grievously harmed or injured. So it's not even an equation. Like, it's not even a question. At that point, red pill should actually acknowledge that, but they don't. That crowd doesn't. They just got way too bored, and they become too defensive. And just like how I was watching Avi Yemeni, and he was saying, he was making fun of Nas Daily about, you're always propagating about climate change. With World Economic Forum, you guys all gathered in, and you all came in your planes and had such a huge carbon footprint, blah blah blah. And Nas Daily made a good point, and he said, well, we are raising awareness, and it's like one CEO who has to travel from one country to another, but that CEO's decision is going to impact thousands of kilograms of carbon emissions or whatever. So, but then when it turned around to Avi Yemeni, that do you believe that that Earth is warming up? Then he said, I don't have any opinion. Well, excuse me, why? If you don't have an opinion on climate change, then why are you concerned about people talking about it and not talking about it, taking action? You should have an opinion. And deep down inside, I knew that he probably has an opinion that Earth is not warming up. That's what he believes, and then he believes this is a conspiracy theory. So I think that's the problem with red pill crowd, and that's the problem with people on polar extremes. They get so caught up on their side of the argument that they get blindsided by the legitimate arguments from the other side.
Yeah, so I think the red pill community, just like a lot of far right communities, and a lot of Nazis, to be honest, they identify certain things that are true, and then they use it as a way to push forward a lot of things that are not true, right? And the truth, so they are very good at finding things that are true that progressives are sensitive about, right? And maybe because progressives have been dominant in media, when you mention certain true things, it gets a good negative reaction from mainstream media because a lot of the influence that progressives have over the media. And a lot of people who are trying to discover what they believe in, what happens is that they look at the backlash and they go look to see if what these red pill communities or far right communities or a whole bunch of other people, conservatives, are saying, whether they're true or not. And they discover that actually there's something to it. There's something to those points. So they use this as a way to think like, well, therefore these are credible sources. Therefore, these are truths that have been hidden from me, and these people are showing me the truth that these mainstream media or progressives are hiding from me. So they think, unjustifiably, that everything else they say must also be true. This fact that was hidden from me by mainstream media, thanks to the red pill community or some other communities, now I know it thanks to these people, so I'm going to use them as a source. And that's a very clever propaganda and marketing technique, because now a tsunami of really toxic and racist and homophobic and transphobic and misogynistic stuff comes with that, right? So our job as liberals is to clean up our act ourselves, like go clean up the left so that these red pill community and right-leaning groups or conservatives don't do the job for us. We need to show to people who are not conservative or right-leaning that you don't need to rely on the red pill community to unearth these things that maybe the progressives are hiding from you. We could do it ourselves. We could show to you that, yes, it's true that there are certain things that maybe there are some overcorrections when it comes to women rights, maybe gay rights, maybe trans rights. There are some ridiculousness that is coming from certain, not mostly, but certain trans rights activists. There's some exaggerations about certain scientific claims that the progressive side makes. There are certain things that are important to keep. Maybe the structure of the family has to change, but family is important, right? You can't just, a lot of people from the progressive side are going too far with the family. They're not saying, okay, maybe family structures have to change. They're just dismissing the idea of family as a whole. The idea of family is very important for a healthy human psychology, right? So that is a very toxic belief system that is coming out of the progressive side, and the red pill community tries to highlight that. But you shouldn't use them as a source, because these people are not just trying to. The red pill community acts like they are bringing attention to men's issues, but they are actually they are also an overcorrection, right? So they are an overcorrection to the wokeism or SJW, because they're not just trying to adjust men and bring attention to men's issues. They're actually woman haters. They're actually anti-woman. They're not pro-men. They're anti-woman. Okay, they're not pro as more sane advocacy for trans rights and gay rights. They're actually homophobic. They're actually transphobic. So this is the pendulum keeps swinging from one side to another. And as liberals, we have to just try to hold on to this pendulum from swinging and keeping it on the same side. What do you think?
On the left side, because we can't. Because if we keep it on one side, then it becomes conservatism.
No, and the scientific side, like I think, like when we're trying to figure out where do we need to keep the pendulum, I think we should like divorce our minds sometimes from am I left, am I right? Just be like, what does the data show? What does logic show? Just like try to step out of your ideological bubble and just look at the data objectively, okay? And look at research. Don't look at raw data, because we are very bad at interpreting raw data. We have to look at people who take that raw data and come up with an interpretation that is based on the scientific model. To have your questions answered on the next live stream, become my patron today. You can do so with as little as $1 a month. Link in the description below.